based on a true story.
This is story of a girl who was born a peasant and rose to rule an empire.
In a small town called Rohatyn, in the land now known as Ukraine, a girl was born who would one day rule an empire. Her name was Roksolana, daughter of an Orthodox priest, raised on faith, learning, and the quiet rhythms of village life. She grew up carefree among fields and orchards, her red hair catching the light of countless golden afternoons. Her father taught her to read and reason, believing knowledge was a gift greater than any dowry. But peace on the eastern frontier was fragile, and danger often rode in on the wind from the steppe. Far beyond the fields, Crimean Tatar horsemen were already riding north, hunting for captives to sell as slaves. That summer night, Rohatyn slept peacefully, unaware that everything was about to change. At dawn, Tatar raiders swept into Rohatyn, setting fire to homes and dragging villagers from their beds. Among those seized was young Roksolana, torn from her family and thrown onto a stranger's horse. She was bound with other captives and marched away from everything she had ever known. She looked back only once, watching the smoke of her home rise into the morning sky. For days, the captives were driven south across the open steppe toward the Crimean coast. At night, they huddled together for warmth, uncertain what fate awaited them beyond the horizon. Yet even then, something in her refused to break. At last, the caravan reached Kaffa, the great slave port on the shores of the Black Sea. There, in the busiest slave market in the world, human lives were bought and sold like cargo. Merchants examined the captives like livestock, deciding which lives held the highest price. Roksolana was purchased by a slave trader bound for the greatest city in the empire, Istanbul. She was loaded onto a ship and carried across the dark waters of the Black Sea. The voyage was long and frightening, each wave carrying her further from everything familiar. Then, one morning, the domes and minarets of Istanbul rose from the mist. She had arrived in Istanbul, the beating heart of the Ottoman Empire. In the slave markets of Istanbul, agents of the Sultan's palace searched for girls of rare beauty and wit. Roksolana's fiery red hair and sharp intelligence caught the attention of the palace's chief buyers. She was purchased for the imperial harem of Topkapi Palace, the most guarded place in the empire. Through towering gates she passed, leaving behind the name Roksolana and everything she once was. Inside those walls lay a world of unimaginable luxury and equally unimaginable danger. The palace gave her a new name, Hurrem, the one who brings joy. Hurrem entered the harem, a hidden world of hundreds of women all competing for one man's favor. She was taught the Turkish language, court etiquette, music, and the delicate art of survival. She studied with remarkable speed, determined to master every skill the palace demanded. At the top of the harem's hierarchy stood Mahidevran, mother of the Sultan's eldest son and heir. Hurrem watched and learned, understanding quickly that beauty alone would never be enough. Alone in her chamber each night, she held on to the memory of who she once was, and she quietly resolved to rise. Then, one evening, she was brought before the most powerful man in the world, Sultan Suleiman. Suleiman the Magnificent ruled over 3 continents, yet nothing in his court had prepared him for her. She sang, she laughed, she spoke boldly, utterly unlike anyone else in his harem. Suleiman found himself drawn not only to her beauty, but to her wit and fearless spirit. Within the palace gardens, an improbable love began to grow between the Sultan and the slave girl. Soon, Hurrem was no longer just another face in the harem. She had become his favorite. And not everyone in the palace welcomed her rise. Mahidevran saw Hurrem as a threat to her son's future and to her own position of power. As Suleiman's affection deepened, Hurrem was granted her own apartments, an extraordinary honor. In time, she bore Suleiman a son, the first of many children who would bind them together. Word spread through the palace. The Ruthenian slave girl was reshaping the balance of power. Unlike most women of the harem, Hurrem could read and write, and she used it wisely. Suleiman began to trust her judgment, seeking her counsel even on matters of state. The rivalry between the two women grew sharper with every passing year. Hurrem gave Suleiman more children than any other woman in his harem ever had. The old rules of the Ottoman court were about to be broken forever. In an unprecedented act, Suleiman chose to formally marry Hurrem, something no sultan had done in generations. A former slave was now a legal wife of the Ottoman Sultan, a scandal that shook the empire. She was given the title Haseki Sultan, the Sultan's chief consort, unrivaled in status. Istanbul celebrated for days, though many in the palace seethed with resentment. For the first time, a Haseki was permitted to live beside the Sultan, instead of in the harem. The girl once dragged from a burning village now stood at the very center of an empire. As Haseki Sultan, Hurrem became an unofficial advisor, involved in matters far beyond the harem walls. She corresponded directly with foreign rulers, including the King of Poland, in her own name. While Suleiman led his armies on distant campaigns, Hurrem kept him informed of events at home. Her letters to him were filled not only with love, but with political counsel. Foreign ambassadors soon understood that the path to the Sultan's favor ran through Hurrem. She had become a power in her own right. Never before had a woman of the harem held such open influence over the empire's affairs. Not everyone approved. Critics whispered that the empire was being ruled from behind a curtain, but Hurrem paid little attention to whispers. She had survived far worse than gossip. Hurrem raised 6 children with Suleiman, an unusually large family for an Ottoman consort. Her daughter Mihirma grew into a brilliant and influential princess in her own right. Her sons were raised as princes of the empire, each a potential heir to the throne. In private, Suleiman was said to be a devoted and loving father. Her youngest son, Cihangir, was frail from birth, and she cared for him with fierce devotion. Together, this family stood at the very center of the most powerful empire on earth. Yet beneath the surface, a dangerous question loomed. Which of these sons would one day rule? Suleiman's closest friend and Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha, had long resented Hurrem's growing influence. Rumors spread of a quiet struggle between the vizier and the Sultan's powerful wife. In 1536, Ibrahim Pasha was suddenly executed on the Sultan's order, his fate forever debated. Many believed Hurrem's hand had shaped his downfall. The truth remains disputed to this day. Years later, Mahidevran's son, Mustafa, had grown into a popular and capable heir to the throne. But a popular heir, who was not her son, posed a threat to Hurrem's own children's future. In 1553, Mustafa was executed by his father's order, accused of treason amid the empire's fiercest scandal. Whether Hurrem orchestrated his fall or was simply blamed for it, history has never fully decided. Beyond politics, Hurrem became one of the empire's greatest patrons of architecture and charity. She commissioned the Haseki Sultan complex, a mosque, hospital, and soup kitchen for the poor of Istanbul. Every day, her kitchens fed hundreds of the city's poorest residents, regardless of faith. Her charitable foundations reached far beyond Istanbul, from Mecca to Jerusalem. Through these works, the former slave girl became remembered as a builder and a benefactor. Centuries later, her buildings would still stand as proof of what she had become. As the years passed, Hurrem's health slowly began to fail, though her influence never waned. Even after decades together, Suleiman remained devoted to the woman who had once been a stranger's slave. In her final years, she continued writing, advising, and shaping the world around her. In 1558, Hurrem Sultan passed away in Istanbul, the city that had once been a stranger's shore. Sultan Suleiman mourned her deeply, having lost the woman who had shaped half his reign. She was laid to rest in an elegant domed mausoleum beside the great Suleymaniye Mosque. There, beneath painted domes and calligraphy, the girl from Rohatyn found her final home. In the centuries since, Hurrem Sultan, Roksolana, has become one of history's most legendary women. Her story has inspired countless paintings, operas, novels, and television dramas across the world. She remains a bridge between two worlds, the Ukrainian village of her birth and the empire she ruled. From captive to empress, her rise remains almost impossible to believe. Few lives in history have traveled so far or changed so much as hers. This was the extraordinary true story of Roksolana, the slave girl who became an empress.